Welcome to Movie Reviews from the Edge, and I am your host, Mark Anthony Peterson. This is not your father's movie review podcast. It's your mama's. In today's episode, we're going to discuss Rise of Skywalker. Yes, the last Star Wars film. And specifically, I'm going to give you an alternate ending that I thought would have made the movie tons better. It's a good movie. Could have been better. But before I get to that alternate ending, there are 7 things I just did not understand about this movie. First, how do you go through a whole movie of this magnitude and leave R2-D2 out? I know you're saying Rey has her own robot, the little BB robot. But guys, if she's supposed to be a Skywalker, you can't leave R2-D2 out. R2-D2 was there with Luke from the beginning. He was there with Anakin from the beginning. You can't leave him out. Huge mistake in my part. Second thing, what's up with Finn and Rey's relationship? I don't get it. But let's dig a little deeper into the two characters and maybe we can ferret something out. Now, what does Finn mean? Finn is short for Phoenix and is Hebrew for the word oracle. So he's an oracle. Rey is Spanish for king or queen, so she's royalty. So Finn is to Rey what Merlin was to King Arthur. Is that what they're trying to lead us to think their relationship is supposed to be? Because there's that underlying hint of love that Finn has for Rey. That was kind of acknowledged in the first movie, blown off in the second movie, but rekindled in Rise of Skywalker in some way, but never really flushed out. So maybe their names indicate what they were supposed to be. An oracle and a king, and Finn is like the protector, right? Like Merlin was to King Arthur. So maybe that's it. But I don't get it. But that brings me to the third point. Why introduce Naomi Ackie's character, Jannah, into the mix as a mirror to Finn? Yeah, she was a stormtrooper like Finn, of African, I guess, descent. They never really tell you that in the movie. So she is the female version of Finn, and they instantly connect and go on a mission to try to stop Palpatine and his bad guys. Then they don't reconnect them at the end. They try to say that that's going to lead to something that will serve as a barrier between Finn and Rey. They just leave it dangling out there. Kind of bothered me that it was just dangling, that she would all of a sudden risk everything to fight Palpatine, right? When she could have just stayed out of the fight. They weren't in the fight to begin with. Obviously, she was moved by Finn to join the fight. The same way Finn was moved by Rey to join the fight. Because he was on his way to the other side of the universe when he stumbled into her story. So, I don't get how they unpacked that relationship. But, like we did with Finn and Rey, let's unpack Jannah's name. Jannah in the Quran means paradise or heaven. So is there a hint there that she represents paradise or heaven for Finn? Maybe. But they didn't unpack it. They didn't develop it, just like they didn't develop Poe's relationship with the bounty hunter. So lots of dangling threads and relationships. Now what's the fourth thing? Why do Rey and Kylo represent the nexus point? Nexus meaning the central most important point. Those two meet. So are they like yin and yang? Are they the opposite sides of the same coin? They are the nexus point? Does that mean that Luke and Leia also represented a nexus point? Because they could see through each other's eyes. They could communicate through the Force. They could sense something was wrong with the other. So are we looking at twin Force entities in Rey and Kylo the same way we look at Luke and Leia? Physically twins and twins in the Force? Let's dissect Kylo's name. Kylo is Latin for kylum, which means sky, combined with Rey, which royalty is Sky King or Skywalker. So the combination of the two represent Skywalker, Sky King. So when Rey gives her essence to Kylo and Kylo returns it, they become one, a true Skywalker, if you follow the naming essence connected to the characters. That's cool. That's interesting stuff, right? Now let's unpack Leia's and Luke's name the same way we did Kylo and Rey. Luke is Greek and means light giving. Leia is Hawaiian and means child of heaven. So it is quite natural to see why I make the assumption that those two are the precursors to Rey and Kylo, the twin essences of the Force. They represented the first nexus point. They were the John the Baptist before Christ. So as you can see, naming is an important component in the characters of this movie. What's the fifth thing I didn't quite understand? In Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, Vader could feel Luke and Luke could feel Vader. So why couldn't Rey sense Palpatine? She could sense Kylo. She could see through him and even transport matter through the Force. Why couldn't she sense Palpatine? Was Palpatine such a powerful entity that he could mask himself so that others that had the access to the Force could not find him? You would think that a granddaughter would be able to make that connection, to sense him even if he was attempting to mask himself, particularly as she grew stronger in the Force. So that's another thing I didn't quite get. Okay, and the final thing I didn't quite understand was why was Rose sidelined in the movie? They built her up in The Last Jedi, gave her a romantic connection to Finn, introduced her to audiences, and then gave her nothing in Rise of Skywalker. I couldn't understand that. Again, dangling relationships, missed opportunities in terms of character development. Those were things that left me shaking my head about the episode. But now, what you've been waiting for, the alternate ending that I promised at the beginning of the episode. Let's set the stage and remind you of what actually happened and then what I would have liked to have seen. Earlier in the movie, Rey defeats Kylo in a battle on Endor and stabs him with her saber. Then she turns and saves his life by sharing some of her life essence. She takes his ship and heads off to Exegol to find and confront Palpatine. After Rey leaves, Kylo is then confronted by the spirit ghost of his father, Han Solo. And in that discussion, Kylo accepts himself as Ben Solo and throws his saber into the ocean. And then takes out after Rey to help in the confrontation with Palpatine. Rey leaves enough breadcrumbs for the Resistance to know where Exegol is, and Lando Calrissian and Poe decide on a plan of attack to try to bring down the world destroyers before they are launched. Calrissian is to round up an army, and Poe is going to lead a tactical team to try to destroy the communications apparatus that directs the world destroyers. Rey makes her way to the Dark Sanctuary, where Palpatine is held up, and it's part sanctuary, part cloning facility. And all of the Sith spirits are in a choir-like chorus standing with Palpatine in an effort to convert Rey to the dark side. Kylo is also making his way to that same sanctuary where he is confronted by his own troops that Palpatine now has enlisted to kill him. Unarmed because he has thrown his saber away, He connects with Rey through the Force, and she passes him one of the Skywalker lightsabers through a Force portal. When they connect in the Force, she literally passes the saber through time and space directly into his hand, where he's able to defeat the forces and proceed towards the sanctuary where Rey is battling Palpatine. When Ben enters the sanctuary, Palpatine quickly dispatches him with a lightning blast that hurls him off of a cliff, leaving Rey to stand alone against Palpatine as he seeks to destroy her and the Resistance fleets, giving her just one option: join him or die. At the critical moment in the battle, Rey hears the voices of prior Jedi, Mace Windu, and others, and says that she is there to represent the Jedi. Then she uses her saber to deflect the lightning and kill Palpatine. But that deflection also robs her of her life essence. Ben, who had been knocked off the cliff, makes his way back to Rey's body and returns the life force that she had given him to bring her back. But when he returns it, he's making a mortal sacrifice, and he only has seconds to live. The two connect, kiss, and he dies. The movie ends with Rey speaking to a woman who asks her, as she's planting the two sabers of Luke and Leia in Luke's home planet, where his uncle was a moisture farmer, who she is, and she responds that she is Rey Skywalker. A very powerful ending, but I think it could have been better. And here's mine. Rey enters the sanctuary and is ready to confront Palpatine. Palpatine responds, "You dare come here to confront me alone?" Rey responds, "I'm not here alone. I stand with the Jedi, and I will never join you." Palpatine cackles, "Ha ha ha!" Then at that moment, Ben makes his way into the sanctuary. "I stand with Rey." Palpatine smiles and responds, "Boy, you dare think you can destroy a Sith god?" Palpatine turns to the chorus and calls forth a Sith Lord to defeat Ben Solo. The Sith Lord is Vader. Ben stares in terror as Vader makes his way from the chorus onto the sanctuary floor. "I must obey my master." Rey hurls Luke Skywalker's lightsaber towards Ben. Ben uses the Force to bring it towards him. At the moment of his touch, Vader is there to meet him with the saber. The two begin to move in an intense and fast battle. Back and forth they move. Vader slams Ben against the rocks with a force push. Ben howls in pain. Ah! Rey turns to run toward him, but at the moment she turns, Palpatine rains down lightning. Rey blocks the lightning with her saber and begins to push the lightning back towards Palpatine. But Vader is on to Ben with another slash and another slash. Ben fights back, pushes with the Force to give himself room, spins, parries, and charges towards Vader. Vader responds, "You are not a Jedi yet." Ben pushes forwards and meets Vader face to face, their sabers locked and tense, howling in the wind. Ben's concentration is momentarily broken when Rey falls due to the force of the lightning that Palpatine is raining down on her. "Rey!" he screams. But in that moment, Vader sees the weakness, spins, moves forwards, and slashes off his right hand. Ah! Vader then hurls him with the Force against the rocks. Hard this time. The sharp edges of the stone pierce parts of his abdomen. Blood spews everywhere. Ben tries to use the Force to pull himself back to his feet, but he stumbles and falls down to his knees. Vader walks slowly, carrying his saber, preparing to deal the death blow. Palpatine cackles. Ha ha! This will be the end of the Skywalkers. Join me and save his life. Fight, and you both will die. Rey holds the lightning with her saber, and in a moment takes a breath, calms herself, and calls to the Force. Leia. Leia. In a cutaway, we see the burnt tree, the burnt Jedi tree, begin to regrow. And in an instant, it begins to sprout. Leaves, branches, it begins to tower towards the sky. Rey opens her eyes and says, I will not join you. I represent the Jedi. Palpatine responds, then you will die. And he brings forth all the lightning that is in his essence and pushes it towards Rey. But as he pushes that bolt towards her, Leia appears next to her, wielding a saber, and helps deflect the lightning. Vader, who is moving upon Ben, brings the slash blow down on Ben, but as he does, it is blocked by the spirit force of Anakin, who wraps his saber around Vader's and pushes him back, pulls Ben to his feet, smiles, and they both now pursue Vader. Jedi after Jedi emerge. Thousands, tens of thousands emerge, each facing off against the chorus of Sith that Palpatine is now calling from the stands. Intense light flashes are everywhere throughout the sanctuary. Jedi and Sith battle for control and balance of the Force. Palpatine is still pushing, struggling with Leia and Rey, seeking to destroy them both. He calls forth all of the Force effort within him and pushes one last lightning charge towards the two. But as he does, a third image appears. Luke, saber in tow, he stands with the two and pushes the lightning back. Shielding, pushing, the triumphant succeed in pushing the lightning back onto Palpatine, killing him. And in an instant, the Sith Lords disappear, leaving just Jedi in the room, the illuminated figures of thousands of Jedi who had come before Rey. They turn, walk towards her, and stand behind her. They raise their sabers to the sky, making a light so bright it would block out the sun. And in unison, they all scream, "We are the Jedi!" The light slowly fades, just leaving 4 spirits behind. Ben, Luke, Leia, and Anakin. Rey notices that Ben is glowing, just like Luke and Leia and Anakin. She knows what that means. She cries, but Ben walks over and gives her a comforting hug and kiss, and says, "We are the Jedi. I will be with you always." Ben turns and grabs his mother's hand, hugs his uncle, as his grandfather, Anakin, smiles at Rey and then at Ben. Rey attempts to connect with Ben one last time. She looks through his eyes, and in that moment, she passes Luke's lightsaber to him. Ben looks down, and the saber is on his belt. Rey whispers, "In the next lifetime." Rey returns to Luke's home planet. From a distance, you can see her building a new lightsaber. She has fashioned her hair like Leia from the days of New Hope. You know, Cinnabons on each ear. Finn is in the distance working on evaporator. A woman knocks at the door and asks, "Isn't this the old Skywalker moisture farm?" And Rey responds, Yes, my name is Rey. Rey Skywalker. Meet my droids, BB-2, R2-D2, and CP-3O. Cut away to the credits. That's my alternate ending. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I hope you've enjoyed some of the paramovie context that I took you through prior to going through that alternate ending. If you like this podcast, you may like some of my other podcasts, like Event Horizon. That podcast is what would happen if David Icke and the X-Files had a baby. I talk about some weird stuff in that podcast. And if you like that kind of conspiracy, parapolitics, and just downright zany revisiting of the Bible, you might like Event Horizon. But thank you guys for tuning in, and until next time, peace.
Hey you, podcast listener, this is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. Take the blue pill. You wake up in your bed and go back to listening to mundane podcasts that won't challenge your religious beliefs and your so-called truths about reality, the universe, and consciousness. Take the red pill. Subscribe to the Event Horizon podcast, hosted by Mark Anthony Peterson, and he will show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. Event Horizon takes a walk into the paranormal with a splash of conspiracy. It's the podcast that would be born if David Icke and the X-Files had a baby. Subscribe to the Event Horizon podcast by Mark Anthony Peterson on Spreaker, iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, CastBox, Stitcher, or any of your other favorite podcast platforms. Remember, all we are offering is the truth, nothing more.